Here's our final chapter, chapter 15. The footsteps die out forever. So the beginning of this chapter reminds me of an early scene at the beginning of the book. It says, the death carts rumble, hollow and harsh. 6 tumbrils carry the day's wine to the guillotine. So this reminds me of the beginning when the man who's delivering the cask of wine to the Defarge's wine shop drops the cask of wine, and all that wine spills all over the street, and the peasants use bits of fabric to try and soak up the wine for their nourishment and their pleasure. This is a reference to that. It's just another image that we can remember from the beginning. And then it says, however, there is not a France with its rich variety of soil and climate, a blade, a leaf, a root, a sprig, a peppercorn, which will grow to maturity under conditions more certain than those that have produced this horror. So what they're saying is, what's happening during this reign of terror is not helping France. Of course, the peasants rose up against the aristocracy as a protest against that treatment and to change the country. But what has happened here is just as destructive, and that's what this is referring to here. And I think also this is Dickens talking to us again. He's making his own political statements here that that this is changeless and hopeless, that this cannot continue, that France is not going to be better because of what is happening during this reign of terror. So the 6 carts are going through the city. This next couple paragraphs describes how the people respond to the prisoners and also how the prisoners respond to the people. The people have an impassive stare, or they look at lingering interest at the people who are looking up at them. Some of them have their heads hanging in silent despair. Several close their eyes and think or try to get their straying thoughts together. One, a miserable creature of a crazed aspect, is so shattered and made drunk by horror that he sings and tries to dance. Not one of the whole number appeals to look or gesture to the pity of the people. So they see that the people have put them there. They don't think that there's any friendly faces in that crowd as they pass through the city streets. The leading curiosity is to know which one is Charles Darnay. Everybody wants to know which one is the Marquis Evermonde, who's going to finally pay the price, or the son of the Marquis. He's not personally a Marquis anymore. And Darnay stands at the back of the tumbril with his head down to converse with a mere girl who sits on the side of the cart and holds his hand. So he's standing and he has his head down, which is probably a good call on his part because I'm sure his hair covers his face a little bit. He doesn't look around him at all. He doesn't care about what's happening. He only just speaks to the girl. And all around him, people are denouncing him. They're yelling and shouting out that he deserves to die. He just shakes his hair about his face and he ignores it. He cannot actually touch his face or his hair because his arms are bound. So somehow his arms are bound, but he's holding her hand. So I'm picturing now that his arms are bound in front of him. It would be sort of how that would be working, I guess. Then we have Barsad watching along with the other, some of the other jail guards. Remember, he's the spy in the prison who helped Sydney Carton get in and switch places. And all he cares about is seeing that Sydney Carton is indeed on the cart. He is hoping that he has not told anybody about the spying that John Barsad is doing. So he only cares about himself in this moment. And then people yell out, "Down, Evermonde!" And the spy, Barsad, looks up and sees that he's there. And so I'm sure he feels some relief that, okay, he's there. But he does sort of feel bad for Sydney Carton when the other spy around him or the other jail guards around him yell out, "Down, Evermonde." John Barsad tells them, "Be quiet, he's going to pay the price. Just let him have some peace." To which the man ignores him and just keeps yelling. And at one point, Sydney Carton, who is quote unquote Evermonde, sees John Barsad and looks attentively at him and then goes his way. So they make eye contact. And I think that's an important detail. I'm sure just to signal that like everything is going as planned. Right at the stroke of 3, it's time for the heads to start rolling, as they describe it. And the vengeance is in an absolute hysteric. She's like, where on earth is Therese Defarge? She's yelling. She's standing on a chair. She's calling to everybody around who has seen Therese Defarge. How can she miss this? This is the most important day. Here are the tumbrils. I cry with vexation and disappointment. He will be dispatched in a wink, and she is not here. So she can't imagine what possibly could have happened. And then immediately the heads start coming off. Crash, a head is held up, and everybody yells out, 1. And then crash, another head. Everybody yells out, 2. The supposed Evermonde descends from the cart, and the seamstress is lifted out next after him. He has not relinquished her patient hand in getting out, but still holds it as he promised. So they're kind of lifted from this cart because, of course, he doesn't have his hands free. He gently places her with her back to the crashing engine that constantly whirs up and falls, and she looks into his face and thanks him. So he tries to shelter her from the sight of the guillotine. And she says, but for you, dear stranger, I should not be so composed, for I am naturally a poor little thing, faint of heart, nor should I have been able to raise my thoughts to him who was put to death, that we might have hope and comfort here today. I think you were sent to me by heaven. So this is another reference to Sydney Carton as like a Christ figure. He is a savior. He is coming. He's sacrificing his life for others. And he keeps saying, keep your eyes upon me and mind no other object. And she says, I'll mind nothing when I'm holding your hand. And he says, it will be rapid. Don't worry. It's going to happen quickly. The two stand in the fast-thinning throng of victims, but they speak as if they were alone. Eye to eye, voice to voice, hand to hand, heart to heart. These two children of the universal mother, else so wide apart and differing, have come together on the dark highway to repair home together and to rest in her bosom. So before God, everyone is the same. Everyone is welcome. That's what this is referring to. It's one of those teachings from the Bible. He keeps saying to be brave. And she says, there's something I want to say. Can I ask you one last question? And Sydney says, yes, tell me what it is. This could be on a quiz. I'm just going to make a note here. Quiz question. She says, I have a cousin, an only relative and an orphan like myself, whom I love very dearly. She is 5 years younger than I, and she lives in a farmer's house in the South Country. Poverty parted us, and she knows nothing of my fate, for I cannot write, so she's illiterate. And if I could, how should I tell her it is better as it is? So she's like, I have only one relative who I love, and she doesn't know I'm about to die, which is probably for the best. But of course, she's conflicted because she's leaving her one relative who she loves. And Sydney Carton says, yes, it's better this way. And she says, what I've been thinking, if the Republic really does good to the poor, and they come to be less hungry, and in all ways to suffer less, she may live a long time. She may even live to be old. So, of course, this is a good thing. If the Republic actually does change things in France, her cousin will live a full life, which, I'm sure makes her feel like she's sacrificing herself for her cousin. But then she realizes that if that's the case, she'll have to wait in heaven a long time until her cousin gets there to be with her. She says, do you think that it will seem long to me while I wait for her in the better land, where I trust both you and I will be mercifully sheltered? And Sydney says, it cannot be, my child. There is no time there and no trouble. So you're not going to experience time in heaven. You're just going to see her when she gets there. And she says, you are comfort to me. I am so ignorant. Am I to kiss you now? Is the moment come? And he says, yes. And then she kisses his lips and he kisses hers. Again, this is a blessing. They solemnly bless each other. The spare hand does not tremble as he releases it. Nothing worse than a sweet, bright constancy is in the patient face. She goes next before him, is gone. So she goes up before Sydney Carton and immediately is killed, and the women call out 22. These could be quiz questions, like what happens right before they kiss, what number is she, 22. And now it's Sydney's turn, and he is saying to himself, I am the resurrection and the life, saith the Lord. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live, and whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. The murmuring of many voices, the upturning of many faces, the pressing on of many footsteps in the outskirts of the crowd, so that it swells forward in a mass, like one great heave of water, all flashes away. 23. So Sydney Carton is killed. And this is a description of how he experiences those last couple moments. And that's the end of our present day narration, the last moment of our story. Then we have a shift. They said of him, this is looking back, about the city that night, that it was the peacefulest man's face ever beheld there. Many added that he looked sublime and prophetic. So another reference to a Christ figure. One of the most remarkable sufferers by the same axe, a woman, had asked at the foot of the same scaffold not long before to be allowed to write down the thoughts that were inspiring her. And I think we had a reference to this in an earlier chapter. If he had given any utterance to this, and they were prophetic, they would have been these. So now we're going to see what Sydney Carton would have written if he had done what this other woman did. And so this is really explaining for us the value of his death and how important it was to Sydney Carton personally to make the sacrifice. He would have written, I'm just going to read this to you. I see Barsad and Cly, Defarge, the Vengeance, the Juryman, and the Judge, long ranks of the new oppressors who have risen on the destruction of the old, perishing by this retributive instrument before it shall cease out of its present use. That's actually what happened. So eventually the guillotine killed pretty much everybody, even people who were considered like the revolutionaries. They turned on each other. The Reign of Terror did not just focus on the aristocrats. Then he would have said or written, I see a beautiful city and a brilliant people rising up from this abyss, and in their struggles to be truly free, in their triumphs and defeats, through long years to come, I see the evil of this time and of the previous time, of which this is the natural birth, gradually making expiation for itself and wearing out, which is what also happened over a long period of time. As France healed, it became a beautiful place. I see the lives through which I lay down my life, peaceful, useful, prosperous, and happy. So he imagines Lucy and Charles Darnay and little Lucy and Mr. Lorry and Dr. Manette, all happy. In that England which I shall see no more, I see her, Lucy, with a child upon her bosom who bears my name. So he imagines that Lucy has another child with Charles, a little boy, and that they name that child after him. I see her father, aged and bent, but otherwise restored and faithful to all men in his healing office, and at peace. I see the good old man, Mr. Lorry, so long their friend in 10 years' time, enriching them with all he has and passing tranquilly to his reward. So he imagines him dying 10 years later at age 88 and passing his estate on to the Darnays and then going to his eternal rest. I see that I hold a sanctuary in their hearts and in the hearts of their descendants generations hence. So he imagines that he will be remembered as a hero in their family forever. I see her, an old woman, weeping for me on the anniversary of this day. I see her and her husband, their course done, lying side by side in their last earthly bed, and I know that each was not more honored and held sacred in the other's soul than I was in the souls of both, so that he was even more sacred to them than they were to each other. I see that child who lay upon her bosom and who bore my name, a man winning his way up in that path of life which once was mine. So he sees Lucy's son, named after Sydney, becoming a lawyer. I see him winning it so well that my name is made illustrious there by the light of his. Like, he changes my reputation, because we all know that Sydney's reputation was that he was a drunkard and all he could really be was a helper of Mr. Stryver. So he sees this younger Sydney Carton, being a true success in his own right. I see the blots I threw upon it faded away. I see him, foremost of just judges and honored men, bringing a boy of my name with the forehead that I know and the golden hair to this place. So he imagines like that man, now man, having his own child and also naming that child Sydney Carton, or Sydney, I should say, because it's going to be their own last name, Darnay, and then coming back to Paris, then fair to look upon with not a trace of this day's disfigurement. And I hear him tell the child my story with a tender and a faltering voice. And of course, that is exactly what happened in Paris, is they changed the revolutionary square. It's where the Place de la Concorde is now, and it has been designed to be like a cleansing of those horrors. There's no real trace anymore of what happened there. And then he said, he would have written, "It is a far, far better thing than I do that I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest than I go to than I have ever known." So these lines at the end, I swear to God, they give me goosebumps every time. This is so beautiful. This is just like an ending to never be forgotten, honestly. So having sacrificed himself for Lucy because he loves her so much is the best thing he's ever done. And it basically, cancels out all the bad that he ever did in his life. And he is at deep peace because of his actions. So what a beautiful story. I really do hope that you tried to read it in addition to following along with these annotations. I just want to point out some of these themes. As I'm sure you know, resurrection is a big one. We have so many different kinds of resurrection referred to throughout this book, whether it's, Jerry Cruncher resurrecting dead bodies as he tries to help the medical field and feed his family. We have Dr. Manette being resurrected from prison, this recalling to life. Here we have Sydney Carton going to a better life because he has sacrificed himself because of his love for Lucy. Obviously, self-sacrifice goes along with resurrection. There's a lot of hope, a lot of love, but we also have a tremendous amount of class differences and friction there, suffering, violence, and death. And honestly, when you look at these very opposing themes, you can see why perhaps there was a reign of terror and why the revolution in France was so terribly bloody. So this is an incredibly important historical book. Not only does it really give us a great insight into the history of both England and France during this time period, but it has universal truths that really apply at any time at all in history.